opening scripture says, "But God has selected for his purpose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise, revealing their ignorance. And God has selected for his purpose the weak things of the world to shame the things which are strong, revealing their frailty. God has selected for his purpose the insignificant, base things of the world, and the things that are despised and treated with contempt, even the things that are nothing, so that he might reduce to nothing the things that are." So, just going back and looking at this scripture and or these scriptures and thinking through them, um, it says that God has selected and it's for his purpose. I just love that part right there because it's for his purpose. And when we keep that in mind, it's like the other things really don't matter. So the God of the universe, the God of everything, the God beyond the universe, he selected the foolish things to confound the wise. So basically, any amount of wisdom that man could think he would have, God's wisdom far exceeds that. It says he's chosen the foolish things. Like people think that the Bible is foolish. It's foolish to believe that there is God. Right? So even with that, in all the wisdom and all the reasoning that anybody could come up with, he uses foolish things once again to prove himself, that he might be glorified in us, in our thoughts, in our words, and in our deeds. And God has selected for his purpose the weak things of the world to shame the things that are strong, revealing their frailty. So once again, anything that we think are impossible, even in your mind, the stronghold in your mind, things that you think are big, are worthy of your time and of your concern, of your worrying. God chooses a weak thing. It could be a small baby, coming up, give you a hug, that they could break all that, that could distract you from all that. So, God has selected for his purpose the insignificant base things of the world and the things that are despised and treated with contempt, okay, even the things that are nothing. So even once again, we remember God said in the beginning, he looked at everything that he made and he said it was good. So just, I just picked this scripture, or it kept coming to my mind, and I kept thinking about it, like all the thoughts that we have throughout a day, that how we put ourselves down, and think of ourselves as being insignificant or being nothing or being, less than anybody else. Even the things that, from our past that, may have hurt us and even, like from childhood, and we held on to those things and now they impact us, as we go throughout our adult lives, but it is for God's purpose, and once we keep that in mind and basically like we can cover ourselves in that, that I'm significant in him, I am, protected in him. So I'm not the insignificant thing. I'm not the nothing. But even in that, I don't have to be everything. I don't have to be the most significant, because even in that, it says that he bring the things that are nothing so that he might reduce to nothing the things that are. So anything that, could be, or anyone that thinks they could be more significant than me or you, God could bring those things to nothing. So anything that anybody else has, he could bring those things to nothing, or just show you that those things are really nothing. But really, it's all about him, his purpose, his intent for you, for your life. So greater is he that's in you than he that's in the world. Today, we're going to continue where we left off. Last week, we were looking at 1 Samuel, chapter 17. Y'all can see my screen, see the scriptures, the verses.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we left off at verse 27, and what was going on at verse 27. So it says, the men told him that is what will be done for the man who kills him. So this was David. He had gone down to where the army of Israel was, at his father's request or command, to take supplies to his brothers and to get a report for how his brothers were doing. And then, in that, while he was down there, he heard this man giant man, Goliath, and actually who the people called a champion, or was called a champion by his own people, he heard him basically defying God and defying the army of God. And, so that really set him off. So, but David kept going around because he heard what the people of Israel was saying, like how big he was, and that he was a man of war, and all these other things about Goliath. And and David, but Saul the king, and earlier in the verses it talked about how Saul was afraid. And Saul was the king. He was their king. He was their leader, supposed to be leading them to battle. But here, day and night, this giant comes out and basically defies him, defies God. And they're rehearsing in their minds all the things once again that the giant is saying to them. And so David, the king, said that he would give his wife, would give the man a wife. So basically give him his daughter, the king's daughter, that his family would live free of taxes in Israel, and that he would give the man great riches. So these three things the king promised to whoever could kill this giant. But basically he wasn't going. Okay. So here every day they got in their battle formations. And the Philistines got in their battle formations every day. And then Goliath would come out there and basically shut everything down with his words only. With his words only. So, and even, the strength that he appeared to have physically. So we made it to verse 27. And David kept going around asking all the soldiers, what's the king say? What did he say he was gonna do? What did he say he was gonna happen to the man that kills his giant? I don't know. Now I just thinking that I just look at that as David thinking like, nah, like he just getting his like game plan together or trying to let this sink in. Like, there's a reward for this. Nobody's willing to go out there and fight him. He's defying, the armies of the living God. But everybody's still standing here. Like, none of y'all want to go out here and fight. So to me, I look at him going around and keep asking the same question as all those thoughts, just giving those thoughts time to sink into his head. It's like he couldn't wrap his mind around it. That's the way I was looking at that. So here we are at verse 28. Now Eliab, his oldest brother, heard what he said to the men, and Eliab's anger burned against David. And he said, "Why have you come down here? With whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your presumption, overconfidence, and the evil of your heart, for you have come down in order to see the battle." Okay, so this is, like I said, David's oldest brother, or like the scripture said, is David's oldest brother, is saying all these things to him. And I don't know what this really stems from, because if you look at it, it could be jealousy, or he could really just feel like his younger brother is being a pest in this moment. But if you go back and read the chapter before this, David was anointed the king of Israel, the new king, because Saul had disobeyed God. So God basically took Saul's strength. He took his blessing off of him. Even though Saul continued to work and to live as the king, a new king had been appointed. But David hadn't taken the throne yet, because there was a time period. There was a lot of time that went by, many years that went by actually before David actually was installed or placed as the king of Israel. So here, but I mean, his brother was there. His brother fully knew, what happened. So I just look at this as, was he feeling like his younger brother was just being a pest at this time, and just wanted to see the fight going on? And then, he really tried to criticize him, because he said, and who did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness? So now he's basically criticizing or demeaning David's occupation, his job that he does for his family. He basically saying that, what you do is insignificant. It's not good enough. And then he said, I know your presumption, your overconfidence, and the evil of your heart. Well, how you know his heart? How you know the thoughts and the intents of his heart? Isn't that God's job? Isn't that God's place to know those things? Right? You gotta get to know your own heart and the thoughts and the intents of your own heart. So you really don't know the thoughts and the intents of someone else's heart. So I just felt like his brother was just doing the most right here, and just going beyond his means just to put his brother down for whatever reason, jealousy, or, was he feeling like David was just being annoying? But David said, "What have I done now?" Was it not just a harmless question? Okay. And then I love this part here because then it says, then David turned away from Eliab to someone else and asked the same question. And the people gave him the same answer as the first time. So he went back to what he was talking about. So he didn't let his brother's words, even though those condemning words of his brother, he didn't let those bring him down. Okay. Because remember, once again, I said David had been anointed king in chapter 16. So he knew, the blessing that was on him. And he knew that the strength and the power that God had placed in his hands, basically. So I just look at this as David coming to that reality of who he is, because his thoughts weren't the thoughts of everybody else that was there. They all had thoughts of defeat. David came right on the scene with no thoughts of defeat. As soon as he heard the words of Goliath, he was ready to fight. So when the words that David spoke were heard, the men reported them to Saul, and he sent for him. David said to Saul, "Let no man's courage fail because of him, Goliath. Your servant will go out and fight this Philistine." So here's now David talking to the king that's supposed to be the leader of the people, and leading them into battle, who was basically placed this reward there, and for whoever would do it, whoever had courage enough to go out and fight Goliath. So here, let no man's courage fail because of him. So basically, quit listening to him. Quit losing your confidence because of what he is saying. Right? And then he said, your servant will go out and fight this Philistine. So then Saul said to David, "You are not able to go against this Philistine to fight him, for you are only a young man, and he has been a warrior since his youth." But David said to Saul, "Your servant was tending his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and took a lamb out of the flock, I went out after it and attacked it and rescued the lamb from its mouth. And when it rose up against me, I seized it by its whiskers and struck and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. And this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, since he has taunted and defied the armies of the living God." David said, "The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear, he will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." So here again, David saying, he went and talked to the king, told him, he was going to go out and fight him. And then the first words out of the king's mouth, "You are not able to go against this Philistine to fight him." So here, David has his strength, he has his courage, and the king is basically speaking words of fear and doubt and uncertainty to him off the top. Okay, "For you are only a young man, and he has been a warrior since youth." So now he's looking at the problem and saying all the good things, all the strong things, or all the significant things about the warrior, about the champion. But David, he's young, and you're just a youth, but he's been a warrior since his youth. Right? That's what, the king is saying to him. And then, David's going, basically giving the king his resume. I've been fighting lions and bears, right? For lions and bears, and killing them, and standing here today able to talk about it. And then he, to me, now is telling the king, and I didn't even do it in my own strength and power, which is the most important part, which is what the king should know. The king that was anointed and appointed by God. For that task. God chose this king. And then God chose David. But here, Saul and all the other men of Israel were seeing themselves as just mere men. That's what they were seeing themselves as. They weren't seeing themselves strong and mighty in God and more than a conqueror in God. But that's what David saw instantly for himself and for them. He said, since he has taunted and defied the armies of the living God. So David is now telling the king, who they are. Because the king wasn't giving the people a vision. He wasn't feeding them and telling them who they are. This is an army of God. It's not just a regular army. Okay? So David said, the Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion, from the paw of the bear, he will rescue me from the hands of this Philistine. So David's speaking his faith. He's spewing his faith while Saul once again tried to spew his fear, uncertainty, and doubt.